The wind and the silence. The first thing that hits you out here isn't the silence, it's the wind. It sweeps across the plains of West Texas, dry and restless, bending rows of brittle cotton stalks that once stood tall and proud. The horizon stretches endlessly, dotted with machines that no longer move, and barns that echo with a hollow kind of quiet. Farmers walk the same dusty roads their fathers and grandfathers did, but their steps are heavier now. They already know the truth. Half their crop won't be picked this year. America's white gold is in crisis. They're looking at what used to be America's white gold, the crop that built fortunes, fueled exports, and dressed the world. But now, it's selling for less than it costs to grow. Storage bins are overflowing, but the buyers have vanished. And the numbers don't lie. Cotton futures have plunged more than a third since last spring. China turns to Brazil. The real gut punch came when the world's biggest buyer, China, quietly turned its back. It happened almost overnight. In a single growing season, Brazil's cotton exports skyrocketed, up nearly 240% from the year before. It's a record-breaking surge that stunned global markets. For the first time in history, Brazil overtook the United States as the world's top cotton supplier. Chinese textile mills, once dependent on American fiber, have now locked in long-term contracts with Brazil's Mato Grosso growers, paying barely half the U.S. price per bale. American farmers can't compete with that kind of math. 7 years ago, the U.S. supplied 42% of China's cotton imports. Today, that share has fallen to just 17%. Prices have collapsed, and confidence along with them. The shock is rippling through every corner of rural America. Rising costs and broken machines. In Lubbock, the heart of U.S. cotton country, the damage feels deeply personal. These are family-run farms passed down through generations, now gasping for air under the weight of rising costs. They rely heavily on imported fertilizer, especially potash from Canada, now hit with double-digit tariffs. That's a 12% jump in input costs, enough to push some farms toward bankruptcy before their crops even bloom. And the machines that once symbolized American agricultural might have become anchors dragging them down. A new John Deere CP 770 cotton picker, once a badge of progress, now costs close to $1 million. Meanwhile, a Chinese-made harvester runs for less than half that price. Even used U.S. equipment sells at inflated rates that make no sense when profit margins have evaporated completely. While American farmers are, struggling to stay afloat, Brazil's producers are, expanding. Government-backed banks are offering low-interest credit, fueling entire fleets of brand-new machinery. Their equipment costs half as much, their fuel is subsidized, and their yields, they just keep climbing. By 2025, Brazil controls over 30% of the world's cotton exports. For the first time in human history, can you believe it? In just 5 years, their per-acre yields have surged 25%, powered by cheaper labor, longer growing seasons, and aggressive investment in ag tech. Meanwhile, in the U.S., growth has, sadly, flatlined. Fuel, fertilizer, and financing costs have all outpaced revenue. American cotton, once the envy of the world, is now buried under a mountain of inflation. Beyond the fields, the industry itself is, crumbling. Across the South, from Georgia to North Carolina, cotton mills that once buzzed with life are shutting their doors. Many have switched to synthetics just to survive. 20 years ago, the U.S. processed most of its own cotton. Today, domestic textile use is down 75%. That's not just a statistic. It's lost jobs, shuttered factories, and hollowed-out towns. For the first time in more than a century, American cotton consumption has hit record lows. Every bale grown in the U.S. now depends on foreign buyers. But those buyers have already moved on. In China, the shift has been, decisive. Over the past 5 years, Chinese textile manufacturers have doubled their polyester capacity. Synthetic fiber production there is now 4 times the size of the entire global cotton market. For Beijing, cotton is no longer a strategic need. It's a choice. Polyester is faster, cheaper, and free of the political baggage that comes with tariffs and trade wars. It's cleaner, scalable, and most importantly, not American. Recent trade data paints the picture clearly. Chinese companies purchased nearly $1 billion worth of Brazilian cotton while slashing U.S. imports by more than 70%. The supply chain has been redrawn, the global hierarchy rewritten. And America has been, well, written out of the script. The brutal numbers for U.S. farmers. Back in Texas, the math is turning brutal. Input prices are up 12% across the board. Energy costs climbed 8%. And the interest on operating loans has nearly doubled since 2022. Farmers are watching their balance sheets bleed. Some are losing $20 per bale after years of scraping by on razor-thin margins. The economics just don't work anymore. And unless the government steps in, many won't make it. Washington's bailout debate. That word, intervention, is echoing through Washington. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has floated a plan to redirect tariff revenue toward a $10 to $14 billion bailout package for struggling farmers. It's modeled after the soybean relief plan rolled out during the first trade war with China. But inside the USDA, officials are sounding alarms. The Commodity Credit Corporation, the agency responsible for such programs, holds just $4 billion. The math doesn't work, and politically, it's even riskier. Brazil has already beaten the U.S. in court once before. Back in 2005, the World Trade Organization ruled that U.S. cotton subsidies distorted global prices by as much as 12%. The verdict forced Washington to pay Brazil nearly $300 million in damages. If the U.S. tries another rescue now, Brazil could challenge it again, turning an economic crisis into a diplomatic one. The human cost on the plains. But out here on the plains, no one's thinking about WTO cases or trade lawyers. They're thinking about next season, and whether there will even be one. Under the scorching Texas sun, you'll find farmers walking the cracked soil, wondering if this land, the same land their grandparents built their lives on, still has a future in a world that's moving on without them. Because for the first time in living memory, the global cotton story doesn't start in America anymore. It starts and ends in Brazil. In the Rio Grande Valley, the land just can't seem to catch a break. Last summer's drought, well, it scorched the fields, and then spring floods washed away what little hope remained. In just a single week, more than 1,000 acres were lost. Crop insurance, honestly, can't cover the gap, and lenders are tightening credit. Across parts of the Cotton Belt, regional banks say up to 15% of farm loans are already in default. Others are quietly extending repayment terms, just to keep farmers from going under. The pain doesn't stop there. It's spreading. From tractor dealerships to fertilizer suppliers, even down to the small-town grocery stores. And to make things worse, the global shipping system has kind of turned against them too. Freight rates from Houston to Asia are up 25% this year after ships were forced to take longer, costlier routes. Every extra cent per pound in freight cost erases millions from export margins. Meanwhile, Brazil keeps winning. Its ports sit closer to China's main trade lanes, and a brand new export terminal, funded by Beijing, lets Brazilian cotton reach Asia faster and cheaper. It's no longer just tariffs reshaping trade. Logistics are redrawing the entire map. At home, the U.S. market is drowning in surplus. American farms are producing nearly 18 million bales of cotton this year, but using less than 2. That leaves around 5 million bales just sitting in warehouses, aging and unsold. Cotton stored too long loses both quality and value. And, honestly, much of it may never find a buyer. In Washington, the debate has turned desperate. Congress rushed through a one-year, $100 billion relief patch, but skipped any real reform. Lawmakers can't agree. Are bailouts keeping farms alive or just propping up inefficiency? Southern senators call them a lifeline. Fiscal conservatives call them a waste. In truth, both might be right. Meanwhile, Brazil's Mato Grosso state is having a record-breaking year, exporting more than 2.8 million metric tons of cotton. Prices per ton have fallen roughly 18%, yet profits are still rising thanks to ultra-low production costs. Their cheap fiber is flooding the global market, driving prices even lower, and pushing U.S. farmers out of business. Can U.S. farmers adapt? Some economists say it's time for American growers to pivot, switch to sorghum, wheat, maybe even renewables. But honestly, that's easier said than done. Cotton farming is highly specialized. The soil, the machines, the irrigation systems, all built for one crop. Converting could cost millions per farm. Others call for rebuilding local textile manufacturing to absorb domestic cotton. But that industry has long vanished. The mills that once powered southern towns now stand empty, silent monuments to another era. Policy loops and tariff troubles. In Washington, trade policy and farm rescue have become inseparable. The administration insists tariffs on China fund American resilience. Critics say they're just a hidden tax on farmers. Every tariff hike drives up fertilizer and equipment costs, the very inputs farmers can't control. It's a vicious loop. A policy meant to protect U.S. industry is crushing its foundation. China's strategic moves. China's strategy is far from accidental. By shifting its cotton purchases to Brazil, Beijing has weakened a key American export, while tightening its grip on South American supply. Chinese state firms are financing Brazil's ginning and storage infrastructure, effectively locking in future production for China's use. Its economic influence disguised as partnership. Is there a way forward? That raises the hard question. If the United States bails out farmers now, is it saving the industry or just delaying an inevitable loss? Subsidies might buy time, but global cotton dominance is quietly migrating south. Refusing aid, though, would destroy the rural towns that built their lives around this crop. Inside the administration, a few voices are quietly floating a third option. Have the government buy up the surplus and repurpose it for military textiles, emergency supplies, or national reserves. It's an old idea, turning surplus into strategy. But at this scale, it would cost billions, and honestly, fix little. The clock is ticking. Out in the Delta, time is running out. In Mississippi, cotton gins are running at barely 30% capacity, less than half of what's needed to stay profitable. Every idle hour adds another layer of debt. Somewhere between droughts, floods, and tariffs, America's cotton heartland is quietly coming apart. Farmers are cutting crews, skipping repairs, even stripping old machines for parts. The collapse isn't a warning anymore. It's real, visible, and happening in the fields. But Brazil isn't untouchable either. Its record harvest rests on two fragile pillars: steady rain and cheap loans. A currency drop or a long drought could wipe out profits overnight. And China, ever pragmatic, could change suppliers the moment prices shift. U.S. officials are counting on that, hoping Brazil stumbles before America's farm economy breaks completely. But hope isn't a plan. By late summer, cotton trades around 69 cents a pound, the lowest since the pandemic, while global stockpiles hit a 5-year high. That imbalance guarantees another brutal season. Farmers who once believed the optimistic forecasts now face reality. They're selling below cost. Many will store their cotton instead of selling at a loss. But warehouses aren't endless. Meanwhile, Congress keeps wrestling over the bailout. Fiscal conservatives want tighter limits. Farm groups demand swift action. Neither side can afford to wait, because the longer DC debates, the more farms disappear. Some say this isn't just a collapse, it's a reset. A chance to rebuild American agriculture around efficiency, diversification, and climate resilience. Others see that as surrender. For families who've worked this soil for generations, transition sounds like exile. They don't want reinvention, they want survival. In one Texas county, a farmer stands beneath darkening skies. His family has grown cotton since the Dust Bowl. This year, he's done waiting for bailouts. Next season, he'll try soybeans, maybe peanuts. Cotton used to mean something, he says quietly. But it's not ours anymore. The storm drifts closer, sweeping across half-harvested rows. From the air, it looks like a muddy river swallowing white fields, a sea of cotton turning brown. Somewhere between Beijing's trade offices and a flooded Texas barn, an industry that once clothed the world is unraveling, thread by thread. And the question that lingers isn't whether Washington will cut the checks. It's whether there'll be any cotton left to save when they finally do.